And now we are starting to go through the last hand that we played on the bottom right table before the break. I just thought that it's going to be better for me to have a break than analyze the hand before going on the break. So at first I think that we can be quite close to any two cards because it's going to be a sizable amount to add to our stack size by just stealing this big blind. And I think in general opponents are not going to be defending their big blinds enough, especially in MTTs, that I would be opening. Before I know what kind of player my opponent is, I'm going to be opening close to any two cards here. And so we did a min raise and our opponent calls. And we are right now, even though we are going with almost any two cards, we are about the midpoint of our range here. I think this is something like top 30 to top 40% hand because it's going to play quite well. Well, post flop, it's somewhat connected. It will hit a mid pair pretty often. And we are hitting some equity pretty in a large amount of boards, and I think this kind of board is one of the better ones where our opponent is going to be a bit more likely to re-raise his ace hands, so it's going to be less likely that our opponent hits the ace, and it's missing all the medium cards that most opponents are doing most of their defending by calling with. Like the 8 is going to be the most likely card that our opponent hits. And we are having a really good draw with our flush draw. So this is going to be a semi-bluff. And I think that it doesn't need to work that often. And I think this is one of those points that in an ICM heavy structure, especially near the bubble, we might argue in this case that check calling would be better because we are keeping pots smaller, but I think in this situation you want to wire yourself more into trying to increase your stack size more. And so our opponent calls and we are getting to the turn. And the turn is actually, it's a pretty good card for us. In here I think that this guy is going to be so tight that even shoving is going to be plus EV, even though this is not a Nash shove. But as our opponent is going to play so far away from Nash, so we don't care about Nash that much. But if our opponent is folding way too much of his big blinds, I think then we are just making more money by min raising because the opponent is only going to play against us with a really strong range, and if he's playing against us with a really strong range, then we'll prefer to fold our crappier hands. And Marcus Y already tries to defend himself. And that's actually true. Our intro music is done by Marcus Y and Northern. They are brothers from the glorious city of Riihimäki. And they are doing some music. And they are doing some music with balls. And that kind of music wasn't, even though it was from the rock section of Incompetech that Neo linked to me a few coachings ago, where we can get some royalty-free music. I don't think that was a ballsy piece of music. It was more like music that you have in a store that doesn't annoy anyone that much. And this is not even semi-bluff, this is like complete bluff. there are pretty few good cards for us, and we are just denying our opponent equity in that situation. And Kauris says, hello everyone and Polar Bear. Oh noes. Not a Polar Bear anymore. In here we are getting like 40% odds, and I like those odds. With Ace Jack, this is going to be a call. And in here we might get even a cheap knockout in there. And Neo said that don't blame me, it was just a suggestion. Yeah, but we are trying to improve our offerings, so you can also, if you don't like the music, you can say it now, and we are either thinking about doing some different music, or we are removing the music altogether. But we are trying to improve. We are trying to improve the quality of our streams, and if having some music on the breaks is preferable, then we are having some music, but the music might be slightly questionable. In here it's actually pretty close because we are also having showdown equity. So that, do we want to bluff here or do we want to just check? We are just having too many interesting hands, and this will be an interesting hand as well. I'm hoping that we are getting as much action as we can hope for with this one. Because Jacks is going to be a really good hand with those stack sizes. I think that there will need to be a lot of players all in before I'm folding my Jacks pre-flop. But then the 10-7 suited, we are getting even more draws. Like we are having an open-ender and a flush draw and a mid-pair draw. So there are like 15 outs to pretty much the nuts. And then there are 3 additional outs to a mid-pair. So I think we are having quite a good piece of equity in there. And I think in this case that check calling is going to be better. If I would have something like, let's say 1000 chips left here, I would be probably shoving. Also, it would be really hard for me to end up in this situation on the turn with 1000 chips. And by check calling we are pretty much guaranteeing ourselves that we are going to see the river for cheap. And the river is a blank. Like there are 40 some cards in the deck, and 18 of those would have been, no 18, 16 of those would have been good for us. Like about 40% of the deck would be even somewhat good for us. So, and when we don't hit it, then it's going to be just an easy check fold. I think that this opponent was so passive up to that point in the game that I think that it's going to be really hard after he has bet the turn to get him to give up. And it would be so expensive also. And it's nice, like here we are already won $9.92 in knockout bounties. So we are here, we are almost winning. By just from the knockouts we have already won like 2 buy-ins. In here opponent bets quite big. He has limped, we have just checked our big blinds, so I think we are still having some fold equity. And we were having an overcard and a flush draw, and I think in that situation it will be really rare for our opponent to have a flush draw. And we were quite unlucky in a sense that our opponent also had the same card as us, our overcard, so we didn't have our pair outs there. But it's also nice to hear that when there are going to be some of the more questionable tunes, everyone is trying to get rid of the responsibility of those tunes. I don't know. Perhaps we would need to think about some less questionable tune to just have when we are needing a tune for 5 minutes or something. And all the suggestions to improve the stream are going to be good. And lately I have been trying to watch some of the more popular Hearthstone streamers to get some new ideas on how to improve our poker streams, because like I think that in the poker regards the interest in poker streams is going to be, or is so much smaller than in for example the Hearthstone streams on the viewer count. So trying to get some ideas on how to make these streams more interesting for larger viewership would be pretty nice. And right now it's also a bit hard that the most popular poker streams, and there are like two of the streams that are now pretty popular, are with guys that are running really well, and I don't think that they are that good of players than they are thinking about. And lucky number 7 on the river. And now we are the guy to eliminate, as we are having our red crosshair. And usually that red crosshair is going to be a good thing, because that usually means that you are having a large stack and you have had plenty of money incoming in the tournament. So both of the blinds are with me in this hand. I think that when it comes check to me, I don't want to give cheap cards. It's actually pretty close in this regard. And one of the blinds has aces. And I probably can't even express how much that wasn't good. But so there are the two tournaments, and in here we are actually 13 places paid, so we are getting paid, we are having the largest knockout bounty, and we are having the largest stack, so I'd say life is good in that tournament. And in the other tournament we don't have the largest knockout bounty, but we are having the largest stack, so life is good in that tournament. And as we can see in here, there is one player that I have marked as a reg remaining in the tournament that we are in the money in. And this lobby is having really a lot of stuff going on in the lobby. Oh, there are 2 regs remaining in that tournament, and there is like no regs remaining in this tournament. And from place 13 to 10, everybody gets the same amount of money, so that's something to take into consideration. And you did G-bet with Jack 10 on a King Jack X board. Could you elaborate on that one a bit? Which table? This is actually great because this looks like I'm going for this guy's knockout, so I'm probably going to get it in quite well. And we are getting the money in well, and it's not enough. In here, we min-raise, our opponent calls. We hit mid-pair, we hit a strong mid-pair. It depends on, I think in this situation that we are small blind and big blind, our ranges are going to be quite wide in that spot. So then like something like mid-pair can be value bet, but that's, I think that's in general that's going to be, if this would be like someone opens from middle position and I'm big blind and I get a great price with Jack 10 suited and I would hit Jack, then it doesn't make sense for me to bet, because it's going to usually be that I'm not going to get called by worse and I'm not going to get better hands to fold. And in this situation I think that the opponents are going to be calling with worse in this situation. They are going to be calling with draws, I think even with weaker jacks and I think even with eights. So there is just going to be so much that our opponent should be calling in this situation. And Neo said that, are you sure that he defends a wide range from big blind? I would be expecting somewhere around 25 to 30% as a general assumption. I think the PokerStars new lobby looks pretty sleek, but I think it's going to be way harder to use and there's a lot going on in that lobby. Oh well, it might just be that it takes some time to get used to all of this new stuff. I think in general that was quite an interesting call and it might have made sense because we had such a great bounty. And in here, because this guy's a reg, I think that he's going to be, or when she's Lisa Luch, it's probably a she. I think she's going to be shoving wider onto us, and if she's shoving wide onto us, it's going to be a good idea with not that ICM heavy structure to be inducing her to shove rather than betting big ourselves. So we would be raise calling there. And with that Jack 10 off, it's also when I'm thinking that our opponent is with a wider range, we are of course also ourselves. We are value betting a wider range, like we can value bet something like a mid pair that we wouldn't against the tighter range. And Neo said that got used to that design, updated a couple of months ago. Yeah, I think that you can get used to the design, but change is always hard. Especially when the change is now said that especially when you are just said that you'll need to update soon. It's always nice to see the largest stack just limp here. It would be even funnier to see if he limp folds against this Platan. I'd say it would be even more fun. So that was something that's noteworthy on this Garmic guy. Because then we can attack his limps with a lot more aggression than we otherwise could. So that's going to be a note that will make money to us in the long run. And 9 queen suited, it's going to be a hand that we are not wanting to induce. We want to have this Lisa Lucci's range as tight as possible. This hand is going to play pretty well even against a tight range, but in general we would like our opponent to fold, because if our opponent calls, we are not far ahead of our opponent in any case. And this was our last tournament, and as we can see, these tournaments are taking about 1.5 hours. So these are quick tournaments. I think the variance in these 90-man tournaments is going to be... It's going to be less than in... It would be in a 90-man tournament without these knockouts. And I'd also think that in general, the variance is going to be way less than in a 180-man tournaments. So these are a really good addition to if you are playing 45-player games or if you are playing 180-mans. I think these are a good addition to either side of the structure, or either as a larger tournament than the 45s or as a smaller tournament than the 180-mans. So the structure is great. We got one final table, no trophies though, so that wasn't that good. I hope that there were some points that you learned on the progressive knockout system, and I'll be discussing something next year, and I'll hope that 2015 is going to be the most successful poker year for all of you. And I'd say that have a nice new year. If you are going asleep, have a good night. If you are still playing poker, may this be a very good night for you. Bye!